I am Samuel Ashford, 36 years old, a pianist living in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. My life is like a sad melody, repeating monotonous low notes ever since the day my mother left. My mother, Abigail Ashford, was a talented businesswoman, the founder of Arcadia Cosmetics and Fashion, a fashion and cosmetics empire with more than 10 branches spanning across the country. She was not only my mother, but also my teacher, my friend, and my greatest source of inspiration. But 8 years ago, a horrific fire at the headquarters took her away from me forever. Or at least that's what I once believed. From that day on, I lived a reclusive life. I avoided everyone, immersing myself in music as a way to forget the pain. My apartment was a dark space, with an old piano placed in the middle of the living room, faded photos of my mother and me hanging haphazardly on the walls, and unfinished sheet music scattered across the floor. I rarely visited my father, Mr. Jeremy Ashford, who inherited and took over the company after my mother's death. He remarried just a few months after the funeral, to a young woman named Claudia, and that made me feel betrayed. How could he forget my mother so quickly? How could he laugh and be happy while I was still struggling with the loss? I chose to live in isolation, performing piano at small concerts and returning home each evening to embrace loneliness like an old friend. That night, the rain was pouring heavily. The raindrops pounded against the glass window, like urgent drums in a chaotic symphony. I sat by the piano, my fingers gliding lightly over the keys, playing Debussy's Clair de Lune, my mother's favorite piece. The gentle sound spread through the damp space, but my heart felt heavy. It had been 8 years, yet the pain was still as fresh as an unhealed wound. I missed my mother terribly, remembering how she would sit beside me, listening to me play, then smile and say, "My son, music is the way for the heart to speak to the world." Now my world was left with only shadows. The clock struck 2 in the morning. I had just turned off the light, collapsed onto the bed, trying to fall asleep. The rain showed no sign of stopping, with thunder rumbling in the distance. Then the phone rang, cutting through the silence. I startled, reaching for the phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up, displaying an unknown number. No name, unfamiliar. Who would call at this hour? I hesitated for a second, then pressed the answer button. Maybe it was a wrong number or a late-night advertisement call. "Hello?" My voice was hoarse and tired. The other end was silent for a few seconds, with only faint, weak breathing. Then a woman's voice spoke, trembling as if trying to control her emotions. "Samuel, my son, it's me, your mother." My heart seemed to stop beating. I sat up abruptly, gripping the phone tightly. That voice, strangely familiar yet distant, like an echo from an old dream. What are you saying? Who are you?" "It's me, Samuel. It's Abigail. I've remembered everything. I'm alive." I felt the blood rushing to my head, my ears ringing. Anger surged like a wave. This must be a scam. 8 years ago, my mother died in a fire. I had seen her charred body with my own eyes, identified by the platinum necklace, the gift my father gave her for her birthday. The funeral was grand, with hundreds of people paying their respects, and I had cried until exhaustion beside her grave. Now someone dared to call in the middle of the night to fake this? "Who are you? How dare you? What kind of sick joke is this? I'll report you to the police." The woman's voice trembled more, but remained firm. "Samuel, calm down and listen to me. I know you're in shock, and so am I. But this isn't a joke. I am Abigail, your beloved mother. Do you remember when you were 6 years old, you hid in the closet because you were afraid of your father scolding you after breaking your grandmother's favorite vase? I found you, held you in my arms, and said, 'Don't be afraid. I'll protect you forever.' Then I bought you a piano-shaped lollipop to comfort you." I was stunned into silence. That memory flooded back like a torrent. Yes, only my mother and I knew about that. My father didn't even know because she had hidden it for me. How did this woman know? My heart pounded, cold sweat breaking out. How do you know? Who told you?" "And there's more." Her voice continued, weak but full of emotion. When you were 12, you wrote your first poem for me on Mother's Day. The poem had the line, "You are the most beautiful note in the symphony of my life." I felt the world around me spinning. Those details were too private, too real. No one but my mother could know. But my mother was dead. I had buried her, lived 8 years in the pain of loss. If this person was my mother, then whose body was in the coffin 8 years ago? And if not, how did she know so much about my past? I was confused, stunned, my mind reeling. It can't be. You're lying to me. My mother is dead. The fire, everyone confirmed it. Samuel, I don't know what happened after the fire. I lost my memory. I've been wandering for 8 years, not knowing who I was. But a few days ago, I saw you on TV performing piano. The memories came flooding back. I remembered everything. I had to call you. A flicker of doubt crept into my mind, but along with it came hope. A fragile, painful hope. What if my mother was alive? What if that fire wasn't the end? I felt my heart beating faster, my breath quickening. The rain outside was still falling, but now it sounded like whispers from the past. You, what do you want? I want to see you, Samuel. To clarify everything, I need your help, and I need to know what happened over the past 8 years. I hesitated. My mind was in chaos, not clear enough to make a decision. My rational side warned that this could be a trap, but my heart desperately wanted to believe. I need time to think. I'll call back later. I hung up quickly and collapsed back onto the bed, still clutching the phone, tears streaming down my cheeks without me realizing it. I lay awake, my mind swirling with 1,000 questions. Was my mother alive? Or was this just an illusion? And if it was true, then how great a lie had I been living in for the past 8 years? I jumped out of bed, my bare feet stepping into the living room. My small apartment now felt like a dark cave, where I hid from the outside world. The rain was still pattering against the window, the wind howling through the cracks like whispers from ghosts of the past. I sat down on the floor, my back against the wall, and let the memories flood in. Tonight, more than ever, I needed to revisit those beautiful days with my mother, before everything shattered. My mother, Abigail Ashford, was an extraordinary woman. She was not just my mother, but also my life's inspiration. From a young age, I learned so much from her. I clearly remember my childhood days when my mother would take me to the headquarters office. It was a tall building gleaming under the sunlight, with colorful design rooms and the faint scent of cosmetics lingering in the air. Mother would sit at her desk, with her hair tied up high and her sharp eyes, explaining business to me. Samuel, my son, life is like a fashion collection. You need discipline to select, rigor to perfect, but above all, it must be filled with love to make it beautiful. She was disciplined but loved me dearly. Once I mischievously knocked over a bottle of nail polish in the lab, and instead of scolding me right away, she made me sit down, clean it up thoroughly, and then explained, "Every mistake is a lesson, my child. But if you don't fix it, it will spread like an indelible stain." I burst into tears, but she hugged me close and whispered, "I love you and I believe you'll do better." That was how she taught me. Discipline not to punish, but to build. She taught me to play the piano from the age of 7, sitting beside me for hours, correcting my clumsy fingers. Music is the language of the heart, Samuel. Let it tell your story. Those afternoons under the golden sunlight filtering through the curtains, my mother and I were like two friends, sharing everything from music sheets to dreams. I remember a special memory when I was 10 years old. Mother was preparing for the launch of Arcadia's new collection. She was so busy that she even forgot to eat dinner, but she still made time to read to me before bed. She told stories about strong female entrepreneurs, then said, "My son, I built Arcadia not to get rich, but to prove that women can take control of their own lives, and you will inherit that spirit." I lay in her arms, feeling her warmth and the familiar scent of her perfume, a blend of vanilla and rose that she had mixed herself. In those moments, the world seemed perfect. Mother was the pillar of the family, the company, and me. My father, Jeremy, who was then the chief accountant at Arcadia, often came home late, leaving her to handle everything alone. But she never complained. "Love is silent sacrifice, my child," she once said. Then those beautiful memories suddenly shifted to darkness. I closed my eyes, trying to push them away, but they still flooded back. The fire 8 years ago, that fateful night that took my mother away. It was a hot summer evening. I was home alone practicing piano for an upcoming performance. The phone rang and my father's voice came through on the other end, calm to the point of coldness. "Samuel, something's happened. Your mother is trapped in the fire at the company headquarters." My heart seemed to stop. I didn't know what to do. I rushed out, hailed a taxi to the scene. When I arrived, a horrific sight unfolded before me. The Arcadia building engulfed in a sea of flames, black smoke billowing into the sky, the blaring sirens of fire trucks. Employees were running in chaos, some severely burned and being loaded into ambulances. I ran closer, shouting, "Mom, where are you?" My father stood there, his face pale but his voice steady. "She was in the research room. They say there was an electrical malfunction. The fire spread quickly." I couldn't believe it. Mother was always careful. The research room was where she spent hours developing new products, safe, environmentally friendly cosmetics. How could something like that happen? The police and firefighters worked through the night, and by the next morning they announced 4 people dead, including a charred body identified as my mother. The reason? The platinum necklace, the gift my father gave her for their wedding anniversary, still intact around the victim's neck. It gleamed under the morgue lights like a cruel reminder of the loss. My father and I were the ones who went directly to sign the identification papers. The morgue was cold, the pungent smell of formalin making me nauseous. The body lay on a metal table, blackened beyond recognition. Only the necklace served as proof. Father signed the documents quickly, his hand steady, then patted my shoulder. "We have to be strong, Samuel. Mom would want that." I cried until exhaustion, kneeling beside the body, whispering, "Mom, why did you leave me?" How could I accept it? Mom, the strong, loving woman, now reduced to ashes. Afterward, my father organized a grand, elaborate funeral. Hundreds came to pay respects, business partners, Arcadia employees, family, friends. The walnut coffin gleamed, covered in white flowers, and Father's eulogy echoed. Abigail was a wonderful wife, a brilliant entrepreneur. She will live forever in our hearts. I stood there, tears silently falling. After my mother's funeral, my father stepped up to take full control of the company. He became the chairman of the Arcadia Group. Then, just a few months later, he remarried Claudia, a young, beautiful woman nearly 20 years his junior. I remember the day I got the news through a brief call. "Samuel, I have good news. I'm getting remarried. Claudia is a good person. You'll like her." I was stunned. A few months? My mother had just been laid to rest, her ashes not even cold, and he had already found a replacement. I attended the wedding, but my heart was full of resentment. Claudia smiled radiantly, hugging me as if we had been family for ages. "Samuel, I'm so happy to be your mother." I nodded politely, but in my heart I knew one thing. She could never replace my mother, Abigail. From after that wedding, I lived even more reclusively. I rarely visited home, avoiding family gatherings. Father called a few times, his voice reproachful. "Son, I understand you're hurting, but life must go on." Go on. For me, life had stopped the day my mother left. I felt my father was too cold, insensitive. How could he forget my mother so quickly? How could he laugh happily beside Claudia while I was still grappling with loneliness? I spent the past 8 years burying myself in music. I kept old photos of my mother on the bookshelf, dusting them weekly like a ritual. Every evening I played the piano, imagining her sitting beside me, listening. But now the call from that woman has shaken everything. She knew memories that only my mother and I shared. That voice, weak but warm, strangely like my mother's. Could it be that my mother is still alive? Could it be that the fire 8 years ago was no accident? I stood up, went to the bookshelf, and took down the old photo album. Pictures of my mother and me laughing in the park, a photo of her teaching me to mix simple cosmetics, and one of her hugging me after my first performance. I sat down at the piano, my fingers gliding over the keys. A sad melody rang out, blending with the sound of the rain. That night I didn't sleep. In my heart, a hope began to flicker. After 3 days of agonizing, I couldn't bear it anymore. That afternoon, the sky was overcast and gray. I sat by the window, picking up the phone. My hand trembled as I dialed. The phone rang a few times, then the woman's voice came through, weak but full of hope. "Samuel, you've called back." "Yes," I said, my voice dry and raspy. I need to confirm the truth. Who are you? How do you know about my past?" "I understand you're confused," she replied, her voice trembling. "So am I. But we need to meet. I'll tell you everything. Let's meet at a small cafe on the outskirts, somewhere quiet. The Old Oak Cafe on Elm Street. Tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon?" I hesitated. The outskirts, far from the center with few people around. Was it safe? But then I thought, if it was a trap, I could call the police, and if it really was my mother. "All right, I'll be there." After saying that, I hung up, feeling like I'd just jumped off a cliff. My heart pounded, cold sweat breaking out. I spent the entire evening preparing, wearing a dark coat, bringing a spare phone, even considering asking a friend to come along, but deciding against it. This was personal, painful. That night, my sleep was fitful, filled with nightmares. I dreamed of my mother standing in a sea of fire, waving to me, then disappearing into black smoke. The next morning, I woke up early, brewing strong black coffee to stay alert. Time dragged on, feeling thick and viscous. I glanced at the clock every minute, my heart a mix of excitement and unease. At 1 in the afternoon, I drove to the outskirts. Elm Street wound long and twisting, lined with dense ancient trees on both sides. The Old Oak Cafe was tucked away behind an old wooden fence. I arrived early, choosing a secluded corner table near the window to observe. The cafe was quiet, with only a few scattered customers. An old man reading the newspaper, 2 young girls giggling. I ordered coffee, gripping the cup tightly, my eyes fixed on the door. Every time the doorbell jingled, my heart skipped a beat. A man walked in, not her. Then a couple, not her either. Time passed. It was already 2 o'clock and still no sign. I started to doubt. Maybe it was a prank or she got scared. But then, the bell jingled again. A woman stepped in, her gait slow and strangely familiar. She wore a long coat, a scarf covering half her face. My heart raced wildly. She looked around, then approached my table. When she sat down, I finally saw her face clearly, covered in deep burn scars, skin wrinkled and crisscrossed with wounds. I froze, my mouth stammering. Who are you?" She didn't answer right away, but pulled an old scratched silver ring from her bag and placed it on the table. My heart seemed to stop. It was the ring I'd given my mother for her birthday 20 years ago when I was 16. The ring had "Beloved Mother" engraved inside. "You gave me this, remember? I've kept it even though it's worn." I picked up the ring, my hand shaking. Yes, this was exactly the ring I'd given her. How do you have this ring?" "My son, I know you're scared, but I am Abigail. I am your mother. Do you remember when you were 8, we went on a picnic by the lake? You caught a blue butterfly, then cried because it flew away. And the scar on your forehead," she said, pointing to my brow. "From falling out of a tree when you were 9. I bandaged it for you and comforted you all night." Emotions burst forth. I couldn't deny it anymore. This was my mother, Abigail Ashford, the one I'd thought was lost forever. Tears welled up, choking me. "Mom, you're alive? How is this possible?" She reached out to wipe my tears, a familiar gesture that filled me with indescribable happiness. "It's me, my son. I'm back." We embraced tightly, tears streaming down our faces. 8 years of separation, 8 years of pain, now bridged by a warm hug. The cafe blurred in my vision, leaving only my mother's warmth. She was thinner, weaker, but still my mother, the strong woman who had taught me everything. After that embrace, we sat back down, holding hands tightly. I told her about the past 8 years, my solitary life, music as my refuge, and my resentment toward my father. She listened, her eyes red and teary. "I'm sorry, Samuel. I didn't remember anything. After the fire, I wandered, amnesiac. I lived like a nameless person doing whatever to survive. But when I saw you on TV playing the piano, everything came flooding back." I looked at my mother, her eyes glistening with tears, the scars on her face like cracks wrought by time. We were still sitting in that small cafe, now even quieter, with only the gentle background music echoing softly. I gripped her hand tightly, that warm sensation like a fragile dream that could shatter at any moment. "Tell me, Mom. Tell me everything. What happened? Why did you disappear?" Mom took a deep breath, her voice trembling as if trying to gather the shattered fragments of her memories. She began to recount slowly, each word like a knife slicing into the past. "My memory, they're so disjointed, Samuel. They return in pieces like puzzle fragments carried away by the wind, but I'll try to tell it all." She paused, gently stroking the rim of her now cold coffee cup. "Before the fire, I sensed something was wrong in the company. Arcadia was thriving, with revenues soaring thanks to the new products. But when I checked the books, I discovered manipulation. Internal contracts had been altered, some expenditures unclear. I suspected a plot to seize control. Someone was trying to push me out of my founder's position. I listened intently, my heart pounding. This was the first time I'd heard about these troubles in the company. Mom had never told me about any issues. She always maintained a perfect image for me. A strong businesswoman, unshakable. "Who, Mom? Who did it?" Mom shook her head, her eyes distant. "I wasn't sure at the time, but I decided to investigate. That fateful night, I stayed late in the research room alone. That room was my favorite place, with test tubes, cosmetic samples, and stacks of documents. I sat there until late, reviewing evidence, verifying recent anonymous investments. Large sums of money were flowing into the company, but not through official channels. I thought it might be money laundering or something worse." Her voice grew quieter, as if reliving the moment. I pictured the scene. Mom sitting under the fluorescent lights, papers scattered across the desk, her sharp eyes scanning every figure. She was always careful, disciplined, habits that had saved her many times in business. Then I found evidence. A large profit had been secretly transferred to someone's personal account, an enormous sum, enough to buy a mansion. I was noting it down when suddenly, the lights went out. I held my breath, suspense rising like in a horror movie. "Then what, Mom?" A loud noise echoed from the hallway. She continued, her voice shaking, like heavy footsteps. I stood up, my heart racing, and called out, "Who's there?" But darkness enveloped everything. I reached for the flashlight, but before I could, a dark figure lunged at me. I was attacked unexpectedly, a hard blow to the head. The pain was excruciating, Samuel. I passed out before realizing who was behind it. Tears streamed down my face. I hugged her tighter, feeling her body tremble. For 8 years I'd thought she died in the fire, but it turned out she was targeted. Someone had tried to kill her. "Mom, what happened after that?" Mom wiped her tears, her voice weak. "When I woke up, I found myself lying outside the building on the damp grass. My head throbbed like it was being hammered, my face burned raw. I don't know who got me out there. Maybe the attacker, or someone else. Before me was the sight of the research room engulfed in flames, black smoke billowing. Sirens wailed in the distance. But I remembered nothing. I didn't know who I was, why I was there. My memories were gone, erased clean. In panic, I stood up and ran, not daring to look back. I imagined the scene, Mom, the woman who once ran an empire, now lost in the dead of night, fire raging behind her. That pain made my heart ache. How did you survive 8 years? 8 long years? My mother sighed, her eyes gazing out the window where the afternoon sky was darkening. The days that followed were hell, my child. I wandered aimlessly, drifting from place to place, no documents, no money, no memories. I took odd jobs to get by, washing dishes in diners, sweeping at markets, even selling newspapers on the street. There were days I slept under bridges, freezing cold with cars roaring overhead. On rainy nights, I'd curl up on a park bench, soaked and starving. I thought I was just a homeless person, nameless, without a past. Sometimes flashes in dreams, images of a boy playing piano. But I couldn't remember who it was. My heart twisted in pain. Mom, Abigail Ashford, the successful businesswoman, living like a beggar. I hugged her, tears soaking her shoulder. Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I thought you were dead. She stroked my hair just like in the old days. It's not your fault at all. The fault is mine for not being able to remember you. But fortunately, a few days ago, while I was waitressing in a small bar on the outskirts, I watched TV. A concert was broadcast and you appeared, playing the piano, the Clair de Lune that I taught you. Your face, your smile. Memories flooded back like a torrent. I remembered everything, our beautiful moments together. I remembered you crying when you gave me the silver ring, the afternoons I taught you to mix cosmetics, and then I remembered that fateful night 8 years ago. I recalled the name on the account that received the money back then. I froze, anticipation building. What name, Mom? She looked straight into my eyes, her voice grave. At the time, Jeremy, your father, was the chief accountant of the company. He transferred the money to an account under the name Claudia Dumit. I was stunned, as if slapped in the face. Claudia Dumit. That was Claudia, my father's current wife, my stepmother. My heart raced, my mind spinning. It can't be. Claudia, she's involved? Mom nodded, her eyes full of pain. I don't know the details, but the amount was huge. Perhaps a reward for the plot. Samuel, I think your father was involved in the fire 8 years ago. I stood up, pacing the cafe, trying to control my emotions. It all connected. Father taking over the company quickly, remarrying Claudia just a few months later. I immediately recounted to Mom everything that happened after the fire, my voice trembling. After the blaze, 4 charred bodies were found. You and Father went to the morgue to identify your body through the platinum necklace, the gift Father gave you. The body was burned beyond recognition, but the necklace was intact. Father signed the papers, then organized a grand funeral. Hundreds came, white flowers covering everything. Afterward, he took control of the company as if nothing had happened. Mom listened, her face paling. And Claudia. Just a few months later, Father married her. Claudia Dumit, the very owner of the secret account that received the money years ago. I hate her, Mom. She's young, with a fake smile, always trying to get close. I avoid going home because of that. I continued, my voice filled with resentment. Over the past 8 years, Father has run the company poorly. Revenues and profits have steadily declined. I've heard rumors from old employees that he's planning to sell the company, then retire with Claudia. They live luxuriously, traveling everywhere, while I've been living in solitude. Mom hugged me, tears falling again. Samuel, we must find the truth, but be careful. If your father knows I'm alive, it could be dangerous. I nodded in agreement. Mother and I decided we wouldn't tell anyone about this. We left the cafe, walking silently in the light drizzle. In my heart, everything felt shattered. The truth from 8 years ago, which I'd thought was closed, now resurfaced, colder and darker than ever. I tried to find words to reassure Mom, but my throat was choked with bitterness. One question echoed endlessly in my mind. The man I'd once respected, called Father throughout my childhood, could he really be the betrayer? I drove slowly through the suburban streets, gripping the steering wheel tightly, my mind still reeling from what my mother had just told me. Claudia, that name now felt like a knife slicing into my heart. How could my father? He had hugged me at the funeral, wiped my tears, then turned around and married the very person involved in the plot to harm my mother? My mother sat in the passenger seat, silently looking out the window, her scarred face reflecting under the flickering streetlights. She was tired, but her eyes still radiated strength, the strength of the woman who had built the Arcadia empire from scratch. When we arrived at the apartment, I opened the door and helped my mother step inside, the small, cozy, quiet space where I had lived like a hermit for the past 8 years. The living room with the old piano in the middle, the bookshelf filled with sheet music, and the small kitchen with the faint scent of coffee. My mother paused at the threshold, her eyes scanning the old photos on the shelf, photos of her and me laughing in the park, her hugging me after my first performance, family photos from the old days when my father still smiled happily beside her. She reached out to touch one photo, her voice trembling. You've kept them. I thought everything was lost. I hugged her from behind, tears streaming down again. I couldn't throw them away, Mom. These photos are all I had. They helped me get through the days. We sat down on the sofa and I brewed hot tea for her. She took a sip, then continued recounting details she hadn't finished at the cafe. Those wandering days, I had terrible headaches, Samuel. Memories came back in bursts like migraines. Sometimes I'd sit on a park bench watching children play, then suddenly remember you, the little boy with the small piano. But then the pain would hit, erasing everything. I thought I was going crazy. I listened, my heart twisting in pain. She told me about the odd jobs, washing dishes in diners until her hands blistered, sweeping leaves in the park under the rain, even begging from strangers. One night I lay under a bridge listening to the river flow, wondering why my life had come to this. But I didn't give up. Deep down I knew something was waiting for me to return. I played the piano for her, Chopin's Nocturne, the piece she had taught me when I was young. My fingers glided over the keys, but my mind was in turmoil. My father, the man I had once respected, was now a suspect. He had transferred money to Claudia, then married her. Could the fire have been his plan? Whose body was that? I stopped playing, my mind spinning with a barrage of questions. The days after my mother returned were a mix of strangeness and warmth. She was still very tired, her body weak after 8 years of wandering. She slept a lot, but her sleep was fitful, sometimes waking in panic from fragmented memories. One night she screamed in her dream, "Fire! Fire everywhere!" I rushed into the room, hugged her, and whispered, "Mom, it's me. You're safe now." She hugged me tightly, tears soaking my shirt, then gradually calmed down. My presence was like medicine, helping her regain her spirits little by little. We had breakfast together, toasted bread and coffee, and she taught me again how to make simple cosmetics from kitchen ingredients, just like before. My son Arcadia started from small things like this, she smiled weakly. I didn't dare tell anyone that my mother was alive. Not the police, not friends, not even old Arcadia employees. I knew if Jeremy and Claudia found out, they would try to make everything disappear again. My father, now I called him Jeremy in my mind, was powerful, with the company and connections. He could arrange things, just like he did with the fire. Every time I thought about it, my heart raced, a mix of excitement and fear. We lived discreetly. My mother stayed indoors and I went out for shopping. Then one evening, as we sat by the window watching the rain fall, my mother held my hand, her voice firm. "We can't hide forever, my son. We have to reclaim the company and the truth. Arcadia is mine. It's your inheritance. Jeremy stole it and we have to take it back." I nodded, filled with determination. "But how, Mom? We have no evidence." She smiled, her eyes sharp again. "We'll plan step by step." Mother and I began devising a plan, sitting for hours at the kitchen table with paper and pen. We drew diagrams, listed steps, carefully, discreetly, like a thrilling game of cat and mouse. First step, gather information. I would go to the company, approach Jeremy. Mom would secretly contact old friends. My heart pounded every time I thought about it. If discovered, everything would collapse. The next day, I dressed in a formal suit and drove to Arcadia headquarters, the gleaming high-rise I had once avoided. My heart was pounding, cold sweat breaking out. I entered the lobby. Employees recognized me and greeted politely. "Mr. Samuel, long time no see." I forced a smile, took the elevator to the top floor, the chairman's office. Jeremy was sitting behind a large desk, papers scattered everywhere. He looked up, surprised. "Samuel, what brings you here?" I sat down, trying to keep my voice calm. Outwardly, I said I wanted to join the company. "I think it's time to get involved, Dad. Music isn't enough to make a living." He smiled, patting my shoulder. "Good, my son. I've been waiting for this day." We chatted casually about revenues, new products. But my real intention was to plant a recording device, a small one I had bought, capable of recording continuously for weeks. While he turned to brew coffee, I stood up, pretending to admire the books on the shelf. My hand trembled, heart beating like a drum. I slipped the device into a crevice among old books, out of sight. Done. My father was busy with the coffee, unaware. I left the office, a mix of relief and anticipation. If he said anything incriminating, we'd have evidence. Meanwhile, back home, my mother secretly reached out to old contacts. She called from an anonymous number, contacting a veteran accountant from the company. Very loyal to her. "I need the recent financial reports," she whispered. The person was surprised but agreed to send them via a hidden email. When I got home, my mother was sitting in front of my old computer, eyes glued to the screen. "My son, I have it. The financial reports for the past 8 years." We reviewed them, hearts racing. Revenues had declined, as I'd heard. But then my mother pointed to a line, a large sum, hundreds of thousands of dollars, transferred to an individual named Victor Hammer, just days after the fire. She paled. Victor Hammer. I believe he was the arsonist. Perhaps he was the one who knocked me out, then set the room on fire. This money was his reward. I was stunned, suspense surging. Every evening after my mother went to bed, I sat alone at the computer, reviewing the financial reports she had obtained. Those cold numbers now felt like vivid clues leading us deeper into the darkness. The name Victor Hammer leaped off the page like a ghost from the past. The next morning, while my mother brewed coffee, I began my search. I opened the computer, typing Victor Hammer's name into public search engines. Criminal records, residency registrations, anything possible. My mother sat beside me, her eyes glued to the screen, her hand gripping the coffee cup tightly. The results appeared gradually, and we were stunned into silence. Victor Hammer was a criminal with a prior record. He had served 5 years in prison in Nevada for manslaughter in a staged accident. His file showed he was a specialist in dirty work, causing car accidents, arson on property, even disguised assassinations. Not your average criminal, but a dirty hands operator, someone hired for jobs that left no traces. I read aloud to her. Victor Hammer, born in 1965, convicted in 2010 for causing a fatal accident in Las Vegas. Released in 2015, no stable employment, last known address is a motel on the outskirts of the city. My mother paled, her hand trembling. He had no official connection to Arcadia, no contract, no salary, just a hired hand to harm me. We looked at each other, the air in the room heavy. This was no longer suspicion, this was evidence, but to be sure, we needed to meet him. My mother nodded. We have to go there, my son. We need a confession from his own mouth. I hesitated, filled with unease. It's dangerous, Mom, if he's a killer. But she cut me off, her eyes sharp. I've survived 8 years, my son. We can't stop now. We traced the address from his parole records, a rundown motel complex on the outskirts, 2 hours' drive from the center. I prepared carefully, bringing a recording phone, a printed bank statement, and a photo of Jeremy from the old album. My heart pounded at the thought. If he recognized my mother, what would happen? That afternoon we set off. The sky was overcast and gray, a chill wind blowing through the car window. My mother sat beside me, silent, but I saw her clenching her hands. I tried to stay calm, recounting old stories to dispel the tension. But as we got closer, the anticipation surged. The outskirts came into view. Muddy streets, dilapidated houses, flickering streetlights. The motel was a squat building, walls stained and peeling, a musty smell hitting us as we parked. We stepped out, the cold wind cutting like knives. I looked around. A few rusty cars, a dog barking idly in the distance. My heart beat like a drum, cold sweat breaking out despite the chill. My mother held my hand. Together, my son. We climbed the rusty stairs, searching for room number 12, Victor's address. Each step felt heavy, the wood creaking, echoing through. I took a deep breath and knocked. The knock resounded in the dim hallway like a call from hell. The door cracked open, revealing a gaunt face. Victor Hammer, tall, gaunt, bloodshot eyes, unkempt beard. He wore a worn-out t-shirt reeking of cigarettes and alcohol. His rough demeanor still carried the marks of a repeat offender. Tattoos covering his arms, a scrutinizing gaze. "What?" he growled, his voice hoarse. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mr. Victor Hammer, we need to talk." He looked us over, his eyes narrowing when he saw my mother, but perhaps the scars disguised her. He didn't recognize her immediately. "Who? I don't know you." He started to close the door, but I blocked it. "I want to talk about the fire 8 years ago at Arcadia. I suggest you let us in. Otherwise, you'll pay dearly." He froze, a flash of fear in his eyes. "Come in," he muttered, opening the door wide. The room was pitch dark, cluttered. A rumpled bed, empty beer bottles everywhere, walls stained with smoke. We entered, the stifling air making it hard to breathe. My mother sat on an old chair. I stood beside her, hand ready to start recording. My mother got straight to the point, her voice cold. "Mr. Victor, we have your bank statements. A large sum from Arcadia right around the time of the fire 8 years ago." She pulled the printout from her bag and pushed it toward him. Victor snorted, smirking defiantly. "What are you talking about? I don't know who you are. Statements? Scam?" He grabbed the paper, his eyes scanning it. But I saw his hand tremble slightly. I calmly turned on my phone, showing him the transaction photo. "We have the full transaction printout. We can send it to the police right now. When they reopen that murder case, your name will be first." 5 years in Nevada wasn't enough? Victor flinched, his face paling. He pulled a cigarette from the pack, but his hand shook so much he dropped the lighter twice. He lit it, took a deep drag, then slumped onto the bed. After a few heavy seconds of silence, he began speaking, his voice low. All right, I was hired. 8 years ago, a man contacted me through a middleman. He paid me to handle a woman at Arcadia, knock her out, then set the fire. I did it, then got the money, $100,000 wired from Arcadia Group. My mother stiffened, her eyes widening. I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the rage. Tell us the details, I said, my voice calm but my heart boiling. He continued, stammering. Before that night, the man gave me a floor plan of the lab, a photo of the target. A middle-aged woman with her hair tied up high. He wanted me to knock her out and set the fire, make it look like an electrical fault. I sneaked into the building through the back door, confirmed the target, turned off the lights, and hit her from behind. Then I torched the room. Job done, money in the account. I didn't ask his name, just did the work. My heart pounded, suspense choking me. My mother pulled out Jeremy's photo from her bag, an old one from the family album. She pushed it toward him. Was this the man? Look carefully. Victor took the photo, stared for a moment, his eyes narrowing. Then he nodded, his voice firm. Yeah, that's him. I remember because of the lump on his ear. On the right, like a big mole. He wore a suit, deep voice, paid handsomely. My mother froze, speechless. She looked at me, her eyes full of pain. It was Jeremy, my father, her husband. The lump on his ear, I knew it well. I teased him about it since childhood. I looked at my mother, my eyes a mix of pain and hatred. How could this be? My father, the one who taught me to ride a bike, who held me as I cried when Grandma died, was the mastermind? Tears streamed down my face, not from sadness, but from anger. We stood up and left that dark room. Victor muttered, "Don't call the cop. I've told you everything." But we didn't respond. The wind blew through the rusty hallway, cold as a blade. On the way back, mother and son were silent, lost in thought. The car sped along the highway, streetlights flashing by like hazy streaks. Unbelievably, the father, the husband, was the mastermind behind it all. My mother held my hand. "Samuel, I can't believe it." I squeezed her hand tightly. "Neither can I. But we have evidence. We have to keep going." That night, upon returning to the apartment, we didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, holding a cup of cold coffee, my mind spinning with images of Victor, his gaunt face, his hoarse voice admitting the crime. And Jeremy, my father, the man with the lump on his ear who used to teach me chess on rainy evenings. How could he? I looked at my mother. She was sitting on the sofa, her eyes red and swollen, stroking the old silver ring. "Mom, what do we do now?" I asked, my voice thick and hoarse. She looked up, her eyes resolute despite the pain. "We have to confront him, Samuel. You've planted the recording device in his office. That's our weapon. Tomorrow morning, go there and force him to confess. I'll wait outside, ready to step in if needed." The plan sounded simple, but my heart pounded. Facing my father, the man I once loved, now an enemy. I nodded, but my heart was filled with unease. What if he denied it? What if he got angry? The night dragged on endlessly. I lay awake, memories of my father flooding back. Those afternoons he took me fishing, laughing heartily when I caught my first fish. Now, was it all just a mask? The next morning I woke up early, dressing in a black suit, attire I rarely wore, like a layer of armor for protection. My mother hugged me at the door. "Be careful, my son. Remember, we're doing this for the truth." I drove to Arcadia headquarters, the towering building that was once my mother's pride, now like a fortress of betrayal. The grand lobby buzzed with employees, but I felt more alone than ever. The elevator took me to the top floor, my heart beating like a drum. Jeremy's office was spacious, with a gleaming desk and paintings on the walls, all so artificial. I knocked and entered without waiting for an invitation. Jeremy was sitting behind the desk, reviewing documents. He looked up, surprised. "Samuel? So early? Are you here to discuss the job position?" I sat down in the chair opposite him, gripping my hands tightly. The recording device, the small one I'd hidden on the bookshelf, was active, capturing everything. I took a deep breath, my voice calm but determined. "No, Dad. I'm here to ask about the fire 8 years ago. The fire that took my mother away." Jeremy froze, his face paling slightly, but he quickly forced a smile. "Samuel, why bring up old stories out of nowhere? It was an accident, you know that. Electrical fault, the police concluded it." He avoided my gaze, reaching for his coffee cup, a habit when stressed. I didn't let him escape. "An accident? Are you sure? I found out someone was hired to set the fire. What do you know about Victor Hammer?" I watched his every move, his hand trembling slightly, his eyes darting. Jeremy tried to deny it, his voice rising. "Who's Victor? What are you talking about? I don't know." "You must be imagining things, Samuel. Music has blinded you. Let go of the past. Let's talk about the future." He stood up, pretending to look at files on the desk, evading the question. But I saw sweat beading on his forehead. I pulled the transaction statement from my bag, a printout from the financial reports. I pushed it toward him. "Look at this, Dad. A large sum from Arcadia transferred to Victor Hammer right after the fire. He's a convicted criminal specializing in staged accidents. How do you explain that?" My heart raced, suspense surging. This was the pivotal moment. Jeremy picked up the paper, his eyes scanning it, his face turning even paler. He slumped back into his chair, his voice evasive. This is a mistake. Maybe the accountant messed up, or Claudia handled it. She helps me with finances. It wasn't me." He shifted the blame, his eyes avoiding mine. That lie only deepened my suspicion. Claudia, the woman he married in haste, the owner of the account that received the secret funds. I pressed harder, my voice rising. "Claudia? You think I'll believe that? Victor has confessed everything." He described the man who hired him, provided the lab floor plan, Mom's photo, and he recognized you by the lump on your ear. You hired him to knock Mom out, then burn the room to cover up the fraud. I stood up, pointing at him, tears streaming down from anger. Jeremy lost his composure, his face flushing red. He slammed the desk. What do you know? Abigail was in the way. She discovered my books. Before the scandal broke, I had to eliminate her." The confession slipped out, echoing in the room. I was stunned. He had admitted it. The recording device had captured it all, every word clear. I stood up, walked to the bookshelf, and retrieved the small device. It was still running, the red light blinking. Jeremy realized, his eyes widening in horror. "Samuel, you recorded this?" I nodded, my voice cold. "Yes, I've achieved my purpose." I turned and left. No need for further argument. My heart ached coldly. This was my father, but he had betrayed us. Jeremy panicked, rushing after me and grabbing my arm. "Samuel, don't! I was wrong. Don't call the police. I'll make up for everything. Money, the company, anything. Please forgive me." He knelt down, tears streaming, his voice pleading pathetically. I paused, looking at him, the once strong man now like a defeated soul. At that moment, the door opened. Abigail, my mother, stepped in, her posture resolute despite her scarred face. She had been waiting in the hallway as planned. Jeremy was terrified beyond measure, his face ashen as if seeing a ghost. "Abigail, no, impossible, you're dead." He backed away, bumping into the desk, items scattering everywhere. He collapsed completely, slumping to the floor, muttering, How are you alive?" My mother looked at him, her eyes full of pain but steadfast. "Jeremy, you tried to kill me. For power, for money. But in truth, I didn't die." I stood beside her, squeezing her hand. "You'll have to pay the price. For Mom, for me, for everything." We left, leaving Jeremy in a state of panic and despair. He shouted, "Don't! Please forgive me!" But the door closed, his cries echoing behind us. We stepped into the elevator, my heart a mix of relief and sorrow. The counterattack had succeeded, but the cost was a shattered family bond. My mother and I stepped out of the Arcadia building, the afternoon sun shining through the glass, but my heart felt ice cold. A few company employees passed by us and then turned back to look. It seemed they had recognized my mother through the deep scars etched on her face. Mom remained silent, gripping my hand tightly, her eyes red and swollen but resolute. We headed home, not saying a word the entire way. The scenery outside flashed by, bustling streets, people hurrying about their daily lives. But for me, the world had changed forever. My father, who had once been the pillar of the family, was now nothing but the shadow of a betrayer. Upon arriving at the apartment, Mom slumped onto the sofa and sighed. "Samuel, we've done the right thing, but it still hurts." I hugged her, tears streaming down. "I know, Mom, but the truth had to be revealed. We can't let him continue harming others." A few days later, my mother and I decided to take action. We compiled everything onto a USB drive and a handwritten letter explaining the entire affair. My heart pounded at the thought. Once sent, there was no turning back. But Mom held my hand. "My son, this is justice. I've lost 8 years. Don't let anyone else suffer." I nodded, drove to the local police station, and handed over the full recordings and financial records to the investigators. The officer who received the files widened his eyes upon hearing the summary. "This is a serious allegation, Mr. Ashford. We'll investigate immediately." I left the station feeling relieved but still anxious. The game was now in the hands of the law. Just a few hours later, everything exploded. The police acted swiftly, like a storm descending. I turned on the local news channel and the scene unfolded. Police raiding the Arcadia office, employees scattering in panic, papers flying everywhere. They searched every drawer, every computer, seizing stacks of documents, fraudulent ledgers, forged contracts, and evidence related to the murder plot. The media swarmed in, cameras flashing, reporters crowding outside the door. Then the footage shifted to Jeremy's private home, the large house where he and Claudia had lived luxuriously for the past 8 years. Police broke down the door, searching every room, confiscating laptops, phones, and hidden cash stashes. My heart raced, a mix of suspense and satisfaction. Finally, the truth was exposed. Justice had spoken. Jeremy was arrested on the spot at the company headquarters in full view of the employees and media. I imagined the scene, him sitting in his office, face pale as the police burst in. "Jeremy Ashford, you are under arrest for suspicion of conspiracy to murder and financial fraud," the officer declared. The Arcadia employees, those who had once been loyal to my mother, stood outside, whispering and staring in astonishment. Reporters crowded around, microphones thrust forward. "Mr. Ashford, do you have anything to say?" Jeremy bowed his head, silent, only muttering something under his breath. The image of him being led to the police car in handcuffs spread across social media. I watched the clip over and over, my heart aching. This was my father, the one who used to hold me to sleep when I was afraid of thunder. But now, he was a criminal. News of the case spread rapidly, shocking the business world and the press. Major newspapers ran front-page headlines. "Scandal at Arcadia, chairman arrested for plotting to kill ex-wife." TV channels interviewed experts. This is a major shock to the cosmetics industry. Abigail Ashford, the legendary founder, might still be alive. Social media erupted. The hashtag Arcadia scandal trended in searches, people sharing the story and commenting angrily. I read the comments. Who knew such dark schemes lurked behind the empire? My heart pounded with anxiety. Would people believe us? But then support flooded in. From my mother's old employees sending messages, "We've always believed in Ms. Abigail." Meanwhile, Claudia, my stepmother, tried to flee but was arrested at the airport as she prepared to leave the state. I learned about it through the news. She had bought a one-way ticket to Mexico, her suitcase stuffed with cash and fake documents. But the police had been tracking her and swooped in during check-in. The arrest video went viral, Claudia struggling, screaming, "I'm innocent! This is a conspiracy!" But they handcuffed her and led her away. Further investigations confirmed Claudia's involvement in the crimes. She was the recipient of the secret funds, helped Jeremy cover up the fraud, and even knew about the plan to harm my mother. She was charged as an accomplice, sentenced to prison for participating in the crimes and embezzlement. I imagined her in jail, her fake smile gone, replaced only by fear. Jeremy faced a slew of charges: conspiracy to murder, financial fraud, falsifying business records. The preliminary trial proceeded quickly. His lawyer tried to defend, "This is a misunderstanding. Mr. Ashford is the victim of a plot." But the evidence was overwhelming. The recording, statements, Victor's testimony. He sat in the defendant's seat, face gaunt, no longer exuding authority. I watched the live broadcast, my heart tightening at the sight of him, looking haggard, eyes full of regret. But I turned away. Justice had to be served. My mother and I were invited by the police to cooperate with the investigation, providing additional evidence and key testimonies. We went to the station a few times, recounting the details. From the strange call to the meeting with Victor, Mom was calm, her voice steady. "I lost 8 years, but now I want justice." I described the recording, my voice trembling. The officer nodded. "You're very brave. Thanks to you, the case has been cracked." At Arcadia, the board of directors convened an emergency meeting, announcing the temporary suspension of Jeremy's position and the restoration of my mother's founding rights. The meeting was tense, but the majority supported it. They remembered her as the one who built the company. Mom entered the boardroom and everyone applauded. She smiled. "I've returned to save Arcadia." I stood beside her, proud but emotional. Images of my mother and me appeared on news broadcasts as symbols of justice and truth revealed after 8 years of concealment. Reporters interviewed, "Samuel, how do you feel?" I replied, "Painful but relieved. The truth has prevailed." Mom on TV, her scarred face radiant. My mother stood before the media affirming that she would rebuild Arcadia on a foundation of honesty and humanity, qualities her husband had lost. She declared, "Arcadia is not just cosmetics, but trust. I will rebuild it focusing on women and charity." Everyone applauded and I hugged her. "You've done it, Mom." That scene unfolded right in front of the Arcadia headquarters under the golden afternoon sunlight. Cameras flashed incessantly, reporters crowding with microphones extended toward my mother. She stood tall, despite the scars on her face from the fire years ago, but her eyes shone with vitality. I stood beside her, my heart filled with pride mixed with emotion. 8 years of suffering, 8 years of loss, now ending in this moment. Justice served, and my mother, Abigail Ashford, returning to her rightful place. But behind her smile, I knew there was still pain. The pain from the betrayal of the husband she once loved. After the trial concluded, Jeremy and Claudia were officially sentenced. It was a day of pouring rain, as if the heavens were weeping for their downfall. I sat in the front row of the courtroom, gripping my mother's hand tightly. The judge read the verdict, his voice echoing. Jeremy Ashford sentenced to 25 years in prison for conspiracy to murder, financial fraud, and falsifying records. Claudia Dumit, as an accomplice, sentenced to 15 years in prison for participating in embezzlement and concealing crimes. All their sins were laid bare before the law. From the money transferred to Victor Hammer, to the confession in the recording, and the evidence of bookkeeping fraud that my mother had once discovered, Jeremy sat there, head bowed low, no longer exuding the authority of Arcadia's chairman. He looked at me one last time, his eyes full of regret, but I turned away. Claudia sobbed and screamed, "I'm innocent! This is a conspiracy!" But no one believed her. The trial ended and they were led away, the clinking of handcuffs echoing like the toll of a bell closing a dark chapter. I clearly remember the feeling at that moment, relief, but also pain. My father, who had once taught me about family responsibility, now had to pay for his greed. My mother hugged me in the courthouse hallway, whispering, "My son, justice has come, but I'm not rejoicing. It's just an end." We left the court, rain pattering on the umbrella, as if washing away the grime of the past. The press swarmed us, but we declined interviews. At that time, I just wanted to go home, hug my mother, and forget everything. My mother was restored full ownership and management rights to Arcadia Cosmetics and Fashion by the court and the board of directors. It was an emergency meeting right after Jeremy's arrest. I accompanied my mother to the headquarters, the place she had built from its difficult early days. Employees welcomed her with rounds of applause, many with teary eyes. "Ms. Abigail, we've been waiting for you to return." An old employee hugged her, crying. The board of directors, after reviewing the evidence, unanimously agreed. The founding rights belong to Ms. Abigail Ashford. We trust she will bring Arcadia back to its peak. My mother signed the documents, her hand slightly trembling but her voice steady. "Thank you, everyone. I won't let Arcadia collapse." I stood beside her, my heart warm. This was her legacy, and now she had reclaimed it. But my mother announced a temporary withdrawal from the business world to restructure the enterprise, restore the brand's honor and her own. She told me, "Samuel, I need time. Arcadia has been tarnished because of Jeremy. I'll rebuild it, but not in haste." She spent weeks in her old office reviewing the books, firing employees involved in the fraud, and planning anew. I helped her, sitting at the desk, brewing coffee like in the old days. "Mom, I'm proud of you," I said. She smiled. "My son, this is for us, for what we've lost." I continued my music career, but this time I performed not just for art, but also out of gratitude to my mother and for what we had overcome before. I played the piano to forget the pain, to escape. Now each performance was a tribute. I composed new pieces inspired by our journey, like Ashes and Hope, with somber low notes leading to a brilliant climax. At the first concert after the incident, I stood on stage, the lights shining down, and said, "This piece is dedicated to my mother, the strongest woman I know." The audience applauded, and I saw my mother in the front row, her eyes sparkling. Playing now held deeper meaning. It was how I healed and shared lessons about justice. 3 days later, my mother and I moved to a small house by the lake, a simple, peaceful life after years of loss. The wooden house was rustic, with a balcony overlooking the shimmering lake, 2 hours' drive from the city. We decided on this after the trial. We needed a place to forget the noise. Every day I taught my mother to play the piano. In the evening, she sat listening to me practice pieces written just for her. In the early mornings, the first sunlight streamed through the window. I sat at the piano with my mother beside me, her hands still clumsy on the keys. "Mom," gently, I smiled, lightly adjusting her fingers. She laughed too. "I'm old now, my son, but I love learning from you." Those sessions were filled with laughter, dispelling any lingering shadows. As night fell by the fireplace, I played a new piece, Mother's Song, inspired by childhood memories. My mother sat listening quietly, eyes half closed, tears rolling down. "It's so beautiful, Samuel. It feels like it's embracing me." Those moments were healing balm, helping us reclaim the peace we had lost. After my mother handed over daily management to the new team, Arcadia began to revive, focusing on charitable activities supporting women in need and victims of violence. Though no longer directly running it, she still provided clear direction. We're not just selling cosmetics, but helping women gain confidence. She established a fund to support victims of domestic violence, donated cosmetics to impoverished women, and partnered with charitable organizations. Revenues gradually increased, and the press praised Arcadia from scandal to symbol of humanity. I felt proud seeing my mother in the news, but she only smiled humbly. "This is for people like me, who once lost everything but stood up again." In one interview I shared, "Justice isn't just for revenge. It's to reclaim the humanity we lost when hurt." It was a TV interview after Arcadia launched a new collection. The reporter asked, "What have you learned from the incident?" I replied, my voice emotional. "Justice is healing. We didn't seek revenge on Jeremy, but to find ourselves again. Over 8 years, I lost my mother, lost faith. Now I've found it back, thanks to justice." I shared my lesson. The truth may be buried in ashes, but it never dies. And if there's one thing most trustworthy in life, it's a mother's love. I spoke about my mother, how she returned from death, teaching me resilience. The audience applauded, and I could feel my mother smiling as she watched on TV at home. One afternoon, my mother and I stood on the balcony watching the sunset, the warm light reflecting on her face. I saw signs of rebirth, of justice and kindness still existing in the world. The sun dipped into the lake, dyeing the water red. My mother leaned on my shoulder. "My son, life is beautiful." I hugged her. "Because I have you." A gentle breeze blew, carrying new hope.